Welcome to another episode of the brand called You, a podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an Olympian, an author, a coach, and a speaker from Singapore, Mr. Kevin Cottam, PCC. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Ashutosh. It's really great to be here with you and to explore.
Thank you. Kevin is, in his own words, a global nomad, a professional speaker, a leadership coach. He's an author. And all of you know I'm very partial to authors. He's an author of a book titled The Nomadic Mindset, Never Settle for Too Long. His journey has seen him choreograph and coach world and Olympic figure skating champions and directing the grandeur of Olympic ceremonies. So, Kevin, my first question, from figure skating to Olympic ceremonies to leadership coaching. Tell me about your journey, which is incredibly diverse, and what has driven such transitions?
That's a really great question as to what's driven me. And I think that what has driven me is exploration, expansion, and the ability to not stay so narrow in one field. And because I felt even though I was successful in individual fields, is that I wanted to expand outside of that, is to new people, new ideas, new thoughts, new industries. And even though there was always a connection, right? There's always some sort of link. And I think that was really important to do because I was able to gain and the transference of skills, right? And so that was important for me. But every time I was really learning something new. And so I think that was really the most important thing. And that is part of what I classify as being very nomadic in your thinking and your exploration is this desire to expand. And so that you can evolve on so many different areas of your life, but also the experiences that you're having. Because life is really experiential. It's about experiences, right? And as we as authors, it's all about the stories. And so that is what's happened. But I found that, every time there was a reason for me to leap into another field. And when I say leaping is that it became bigger because the one became too narrow for me. And so I needed to go much bigger and mix bigger. And and I don't mean bigger so that I become more egotistical about it. No, it's just that I believe bigger is more expansion. And it's not to do with anything else more than that. And yeah.
Very well said. Thank you. But you also describe yourself as a global nomad. How has this identity taken shape in your life? And are there any myths about nomadic life that you want to dispel?
Yeah. Let's start with the myth. Okay. Is that, for example, most people will think, okay, I have a nomadic mindset because I like to travel. And I say to people, no, that's not necessarily true. Is that you can go on a bus tour and that's not necessarily nomadic travel because you get off the bus, you take the picture and you get it back on. And I say, no, that is not. To be nomadic, to have a nomadic mindset when you travel, physically travel, is about integrating into the cultures that you're there. It's to understand the people, to understand the language a little bit more, is to eat with people, to integrate, just to be able to appreciate and also understand that you are a guest in somebody else's land. And so that is a huge respect and trust that it needs to be built. So that is something that I want to dispel, that it is not necessarily true. If you travel, you have a nomadic mindset.
Yeah.
So how did I know this? I mean, I believe when I've connected the dots. So I looked at this when I was sitting in a yurt in Mongolia. I was sitting with my hosts and having long conversations, through my translator. And all of a sudden, there was something that struck me, is that this bigger perspective of nomad. And so I wanted to know in myself, and I did a very fast backtrack in my life to look for periods in my life where I thought, okay, I'm very nomadic in my thinking. And so I went all the way back to my early years. When I was just growing up, I grew up on a large lake on the west coast of Canada on Vancouver Island in a logging camp of 400 people. And there was mountains over there on the sides of the lake. And I often remember myself at a very young age going, what's over those mountains?
Mm,
And I began to see that that was an exploration. And
mm,
even through school, and then when I did very well in figure skating and became a Canadian champion, all that I wanted to do was to then go, I want to explore the world.
mm,
I want to be a backpacker. I want to go and explore the world. But I couldn't because I was training. But all my life, as I said, one thing led to another because I was in search of learning, growth,
mm.
exploration, physically, geographically, as well as internally, as self-development. And so all of these things, I believe, gave me that sense of what a nomad is. And the nomadic mindset is essence is in movement.
Mm,
Not only physical movement,
mm,
but mental, heart, gut movement. All right. So it is holistic in that sense, and that is very interconnected with nature. So it's whole. And because nomadic cultures and indigenous cultures are very interconnected with all ecosystems, is that this is also the primalness of us ourselves as well.
mm,
Is
mm.
but we've lost that living in cities and not getting out into nature as much as we want to or can do.
Yeah.
And so the nomadic mindset, when I was in Mongolia, I asked a woman, what is the meaning of nomad?
Mm,
And she said, it's not what you think it is. And
mm,
so she was knowing that I was going to say it's the dictionary meaning a group of people, a tribe that are moving from place to place without a fixed home,
mm,
find new pastures. And she said, no, it's the movement of the mind.
mm.
And I thought, this is so beautiful.
Absolutely.
The movement of the mind. And all of a sudden I thought, this is what a true essence of it is.
Mm,
And when I work with my clients and when I work with organizations, it is how do we shift the mindsets? How do we shift in our, get out of this fixed position of change and
yeah.
don't like change, but change is happening all the time. You know,
Mm,
the nomads and indigenous people have all of these ways of looking at the things that we think are very complex,
yeah.
right? And they see it very simply. So that became very interesting to me in my journey for that. But that is how realized that I was a global nomad is the shift. But it was not just a shift geographically. It helped, but
Correct.
it's a combination of a variety of different aspects. I
Mm,
was not allowing myself to get so settled and just stay in a place or settled in thoughts or settled
mhm,
in one profession or settled in which way I would do it. Even in figure skating, you
mm,
know, I was not settled for one thing.
mm,
For example, in the choreography aspect of it is that I first of all was a coach,
mm.
and then I was a dancer, and so then I wanted to combine the two, and then I became a choreographer of elite skaters, and then I thought, okay, that's individual, so let's
Mm.
do bigger shows.
Correct.
So then I went bigger into the shows, and then I created my own artistic company, skating company, and then I went from there, I went, okay, so what else is in movement? And then I
Mm,
went into filmmaking.
mm.
And because that again is moving pictures.
Yeah.
And all of this is movement.
Correct.
And I think probably, Ashutosh, you also feel that people get stuck, huh? They think they're stuck,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but they're not stuck. It's actually everything is still in movement. It's just
Absolutely
that the
right.
mind
Yeah.
has gone into a lock position.
Absolutely. Very, very well said. What a great response. Um, you also, you mentioned in a few minutes back about your passion for skating, and you've also been involved with the Olympics. Tell me a little bit about this journey uh, with the world and Olympic figure skating champions, and how does that influence your work today?
It's a really great question. And I think what influences a lot is understanding when you first of all if you work individually with a champion you get to see every nook and cranny of them,
Correct.
whether I'm doing not as the main coach, I'm the main coach, but I'm also work with the main coach, and so we collaborate. So there's a collaboration which is
Hmm. Mm,
but then there's also collaboration with the client or the skater. And I think that that is something that I've taken forward. All
mm,
right. But at the same time is understanding the psychological safety that you have. But at the same time, as always having, you need to share with them very important things so that they are realistic
Mm,
about competition, and about their training, about all sorts of aspects of the development.
mm,
And it is always about getting better, right? And it's also about achieving, and it's
right.
also about working the talent and
Mm,
discovering the talent within. And so I think that that has allowed me understanding and pulling out the talent,
mhm,
right? Has been the same for me working with leaders is how
mm,
do I pull out that inner talent and those notions that they might be hiding, that they might not be using. And
mm,
that is something that I've also brought with me is
mm,
the ability to look at someone physically and also watch the body language, listen to their language and their movement, and to get curious as to why are they saying certain things? Why are they acting in certain ways? What? So this has allowed me to, I believe, to be expansive in the when I work in leadership in organizations or public or private sector, is I take this forward. And then
mm,
again, when I'm working in large productions, it's about how do I extend that to large teams?
mm,
Right. So because most of those productions are one-off, and for what I do as the choreographer, the director, the conceptualist, it's a package, it's a one-off, it's over a period of time. And so, therefore, you need to be very clear on strategy. You need to be very clear on how you're going to create this production over a period of time. So you have to take into the risks, you have to take into, the challenges that are happening. You have to look at all of the temperaments of individuals that are in the different departments
mm,
and how do they all collaborate. And I believe that this has been very useful in the work that I do with organizations now and
mm.
to help them because I believe that my process was then is very similar to my process now.
Right,
I
right.
just put different words to it.
Mm,
And I was centered around the nomadic mindset.
mm.
And so I think that the structure, teamwork, temperaments, emotions, all of these are rampant in,
Correct,
and you have to deal with them.
correct.
So that I think and you know what? I have to say,
Mm-hmm,
I didn't learn it through books. I learned it through experience, by curiosity,
mm,
about touch and feel. It's about listening. It's about being alert. It's about observing. It's about
mm,
all of this movement. But I never did any choreographic work through a book. I
mm,
never did any team work. When I went into a production at like the Olympics, I had no idea.
mm.
But I believed that I could do
Yeah,
it. I
yeah.
believed that I had all the skills to do it. And what
Mm,
I had, they needed.
mm,
And it was just finding other ways to do it. So, in other words, from going from one person to expanding to hundreds of people,
mm,
right?
mm.
So, that expansion was so exciting for me.
Yeah,
How do I do it?
absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. Um, can you tell us one unforgettable moment from directing an Olympic ceremony?
Gosh, directing an Olympic closing ceremonies, there were so many.
Mm,
Um, I think one of the moments which was really crucial,
mhm,
and that was that and I think this is a business one as well as is that it was a winter. It was in winter, and it was in Calgary. And in Calgary, they have very unusual temperatures,
mhm,
and it was very cold for the opening ceremonies. And we were the closing ceremony, so it was 2 weeks later. First of all, we were completely organized. We were completely well rehearsed, so everything was done then. And I always believe you have to prepare for the unexpected, and
mm,
so you have to be totally ready so that you're not leaving all the loose ends, just minor loose ends, but the major part of the production must be done well in advance.
mm,
And and this played out in that what happened 2 days after the opening ceremonies, which was minus 15 degrees, we had an incredible Chinook wind, which changed the temperature to a balmy plus 22 degrees.
mhm,
And then because the ice rink was a massive, massive ice rink in the middle of an open air stadium, it was melting.
Mm.
So we could not rehearse. We could
Wow.
not do anything. We had no idea. We had no plan B. And we thought, what happens if the temperature doesn't change?
Mm.
What are we going to do?
Mm.
And so this happened for a long period of time through that. And we were anxious. We couldn't do any rehearsals.
Mm.
Everything was ready, but we couldn't do what was actually there.
Yeah, yeah.
And so what happened was, luckily, we've one of the team found a installation product which he put onto the top of that they got from the United States, and they put it onto the ice rink during the day um, to help it from the hot day noonday sun, and then we took it off in rehearsals in the evening, and so that was great. And then, luckily, 2 days before the closing ceremonies, the temperature changed and it plummeted again. And so we were so excited.
Amazing.
We had
Amazing.
no plan B.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, the problem is that what do we do? The country
Correct.
is relying on us and
Correct.
the world is waiting for us. You know, what's going to happen?
I
So
know.
it was the most exciting but excruciating time. But we laughed a lot during that whole period. And, you know, what could you do? We sat by the ice rink and we had lounge chairs and had our swimsuits on. And some of the people, they went and dove onto the ice and slid in the water that was there. And so
Mm.
it was very, very funny. But
Amazing.
there were some wonderful moments.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Kevin, now let's move to your book, The Nomadic Mindset, Never Settle for Too Long. You've given me a beautiful description of the nomadic mind that your friend in Mongolia told you about. But tell me the definition of the nomadic mindset. How would it be relevant to leaders today?
So the relevance is extremely important. And I believe because we are in a huge area, time of uncertainty and unpredictability, you just look at the tariff wars, the global
Yeah.
instability, political situations, economics are shifting and daily. People are uncertain about their jobs, people with digital AI. And our mindset is old. Our mindset is in an industrialized mindset,
Mm.
which I also talk about in my book, which are two other mindsets, which are a builder mindset and also a settler mindset. And we have these three inside of us.
Mm.
So the nomadic mindset is really one which is based in movement, about adaptability. It sees
Mm.
everything as opportunities, it sees possibilities, it looks at agility, flexibility, and just that whole sense of we must keep things in a movement, like a symphony.
Mm.
And that is what is happening on an ongoing basis.
Mm.
So I think that what we need today is this openness, and the nomadic mindset is this curiosity, it's openness, it's the
Mm.
understanding of expansion. And this is exactly what we're needing today because we're getting stuck, very,
Mm.
very stuck in our minds and our hearts and our guts. And I think that the nomadic mindset, when I ask these questions of leaders, because most of the leaders have what I would call a builder mindset. All
Mm.
right. And some of them, of course, also have a settler, and also some of them do have nomadic.
Mm.
When I ask what their dominant mindset is that was what I will find. But then I ask, what is the question? What do you need more now and moving
Mm.
forward? And they say a nomadic mindset.
Mm.
And I'm working with Novartis at the moment, and we're going through this exploration, and it's very interesting to see them work and this new language that they're getting.
Mm. Mm.
And they are all, and many of them are moving towards what I need right now today is a nomadic mindset so that I
Mm.
can deal with the challenges within the organization. I can deal with my teams. I can deal with the difficult decision making, all of this,
Mm.
because this is very organic,
Correct. Correct.
right?
You also talk about the nomadic transition framework. Tell me about this framework and how does it support leaders in times of uncertainty?
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Ashutosh. The framework, the nomadic mindset, the nomadic transition framework is really based on the nomadic, and it can be, it's useful in any sort of decision, creativity, exploration, teamwork, develop, how to deal with elephants in the room. It's a process, all right? And you can in different ways. And it is, what it starts with is explore. So the first stage is to start exploring an idea, a thought, a conversation, an elephant in the room, whichever. So there's a variety of questions you might ask yourself. And then we move, once we've got explore, is to expand what is happening within you, what is happening within the team, what is happening within the organization. What is the expansion that can start happening?
Mm.
And then we start to see, well, what is truly emerging now in this shift?
Mm.
And we start seeing that. And then the next part is experiencing. How can we experience this? And how are we experiencing these
Yeah.
shifts in the are moving? And then the evolution. And as the last part is, how are we moving? We are evolving towards.
Mm.
What is it?
Mm.
And what is the solution? What is the, the new change that's happening within the organization? How does the team need to evolve to bring in more people or less people or more AI, digital transformation?
Mm.
What is that evolution? But this is a process. And it's actually a creative process, which I've used during choreographic and to get my ideas through. But it is also something that can be utilized anywhere in any situation.
Mm. Well said. And do you believe that traditional leadership models are falling short of the nomadic mindset and your framework in today's world?
I hate to say mine is better than someone else's or it's different than others. I just know that, when people come into the room and start exploring, they go, there's something different already here.
Yeah.
This is not the typical type. You don't have any desk. No, I don't want desks. Um, I treat it like you would sitting around a bonfire.
Mm.
And when I take people on leadership journeys, what is different is that I believe that leaders don't need more skill or transaction. They need more transformation. And so that is what I focus on is transformation. And how do we get that? We don't get transformation by just being busy, busy, busy and not taking the time.
Correct.
So I invite people into this transition, into this journey, and I only do half days.
Mm.
And because I know that they don't have time,
Yeah.
first of all.
Yeah.
All right. But I use this as this is your time to reflect, to pause, to work out and issues that are going on. And so I collaborate with them to find solutions as well as to impart new things such as storytelling, messaging, and other items. But I don't teach skill. I
Mm.
believe they have the skill.
Mm.
And it's about bringing their awareness.
Mm.
And and I think that it is also about another perspective.
Mm.
And I also, what is important with this is for them to truly know that we have three mindsets.
Mm.
In that journey, we look at all the mindsets as how do I need to respond today? Is this with a nomadic mindset thinking, or is it a builder or a settler? Does the organization need in this department need to settle before we start innovating again? So there is this language that starts to happen.
Mm.
And that is, I guess, in many respects, is a different model. And but I use a lot of creative elements
Correct.
in it, and
Correct.
it's very experiential.
Yeah. 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 Kevin, I have time for two more questions for you.
Sure.
Um, can the nomadic mindset be cultivated, or is it something people are born with?
Okay, so I believe that everybody has nomad inside of them. All
Mm-hmm.
right. It is how they are brought up. Will it develop? So it's the same thing in anything, right? Is what
Yeah.
is our talent? Will we
Sure.
grow that talent?
Sure.
It's the same for this mindset. It is it living within us. And if education puts us into boxes, if culture puts us into boxes, if families put it into strict regimes, this nomad may have a problem. And if this nomad is living within them, they will get pushback. The
Mm.
family will get pushback, education will get because they will revolt.
Mm.
And it's because they don't learn the same way. in nomadic, there is often a very strong movement, physical movement, is that there is not only mental movement, but heart movement. And whereas, if you are in a settler mindset, you're okay to be in a box, to find shapes and structure. And not to say that nomads don't like structure, they do have structure, but it has to have movement and a flow to it. So I believe everybody has all three.
Yeah.
And we may utilize them in different times in our life.
Yeah.
But there's a part of awareness is, do I really want to grow this? And if that's the case, what is that? Do I need to search out new types of professions, new education, do new opportunities in life? What is it? But if I'm willing to stay in one box, I can still do that. But to understand, I still have the choice and opportunity to develop.
Amazing.
And that is all within us.
Correct.
So it's whether you want to, it's like a seed, right? Of a plant. If you want to water it, it will grow. If you don't water it, it will die.
Absolutely. Great response. And my last question for you. If our viewers and listeners or readers of your book could take away one idea from the nomadic mindset, what would it be?
A quote that I was given by a young student at the University of Mongolia. And she said to me, nomads, think vastly, act narrowly. Think vastly, act narrowly. Think vastly, act narrowly.
Amazing.
And it's a beautiful quote in that most of us are very narrow. And one of the reasons for writing my book was that I believe that we become too narrow. And if we do not expand our thinking, our way of being, we are toast.
Amazing. 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 And on that amazing set of words, think fastly, act narrowly. And you said that was one of the motivations to write your book. Thank you, Kevin, for speaking to me about your own incredible journey as a global nomad, as someone who has done so much work directing different types of experiences, and of course the Olympics, which is for most people a once in a lifetime experience, and you seem to have done it so many times. Thank you also for speaking to me about your book, The Nomadic Mindset, Never Settle for Too Long. I'm going to ask all our viewers and listeners to go and check out your book, Mr. Kevin Cottam's book, The Nomadic Mindset, Never Settle for Too Long. I'm going to get a copy for myself. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Take care. Be well.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website, www.tbcy.in, to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.